When I was a kid, my parents left me at a train station as a joke. Let's see how she finds her way home, they laughed. I never went back. 20 years later, they tracked me down. This morning, 29 missed calls. I thought I'd finally buried the ghosts of my past, locked away the memory of being abandoned by my own parents, alone and terrified in a city 3 hours from home. But then my phone lit up with a name I never expected to see again, and suddenly, 2 decades of healing shattered in an instant. Before I dive into what happened that day, you need to understand the kind of home I grew up in. On the surface, in Ridgeview, Pennsylvania, we were the picture-perfect American family. Frank and Karen Taylor, thriving small business owners. Dad owned the biggest hardware store, Mom had her award-winning bakery, with their 2 sweet kids, my older brother Ethan and me, Jennifer. Later, Megan. To everyone else, we were the ideal. But the moment that front door closed behind them, the Frank and Karen I knew vanished. Our home wasn't a sanctuary. It was an unpredictable minefield. Dad's booming laugh and generous smile, they evaporated the second he walked through our front door. His drinking would start at dinner and just escalate. A bad day at the store meant we were all walking on eggshells, holding our breath. And Mom? Instead of protecting us, she became his most loyal enabler. Your father works so hard for this family, she'd say. Or, he just needs to blow off some steam. What they called tough love was really just cruelty, pure and simple, dressed up as discipline. These teaching moments were nothing short of emotional abuse. I was only 7 years old when they first taught me a lesson at the grocery store. I dared to ask for candy, and their response? They left me there for over an hour. When they finally came back, they found me sobbing by the customer service desk. Maybe now you'll learn not to be so greedy, Mom had sneered. The store manager had literally been on the verge of calling the police. My older brother Ethan, he was the golden child, star quarterback, straight A student, Dad's fishing buddy. Well, I'd get grilled for a 97% on a math test. What happened to the other 3%? Ethan would be praised for a B+. I became the family scapegoat. Everything that went wrong was somehow my fault. Dinner was cold. I must have distracted Mom. Dad had a bad day, probably because he was up late helping me with homework. The psychological toll of that was absolutely crushing for a kid. My 11th birthday? That one still stings. Mom had promised a small party with friends, and I was buzzing with excitement, even helping her bake cupcakes the night before. But the morning of, they casually announced, "We're going to the amusement park instead." I tried to hide my disappointment. They drove for almost an hour, pulled into the parking lot, handed me $20 and just said, "Have fun. We'll pick you up at 5. I spent my entire birthday alone, too scared to go on any rides, just sitting on a bench watching other families laugh together. They finally picked me up at 7, not 5, finding me absolutely terrified and in tears. "Just teaching you to be independent," Dad had actually laughed. "Besides, we had to pick up your cake." There was no cake, no presents. And when I cried, they called me ungrateful. These cruel jokes and lessons were just normal. So I developed coping mechanisms. I stayed quiet. I tried to be invisible. I'd escape to friends' houses whenever I could. But mostly I lost myself in art. Drawing became my sanctuary. On paper, I could create entire worlds where adults were kind and children were safe, and I was safe. The day before the train station, it's burned into my memory. I'd gotten my report card, straight A's, except for 1 A- in science. Most parents would celebrate that, right? Not mine. "An A-?" Dad had bellowed, waving the chai paper in my face. "What's wrong with you? Are you getting lazy?" "Ethan never got A-." I whispered. "I tried really hard." Mom just scoffed. "Clearly not hard enough. We're not raising mediocre children." That night I overheard them, in the kitchen. "She needs to learn that life doesn't hand you anything," Dad had said. "She's too soft, too sensitive. Maybe she needs a real lesson." Mom agreed. Something she won't forget. The very next morning, they announced a family day trip to Chicago. Just the 3 of us, since Ethan had football practice, which was unusual enough to spark a tiny flicker of hope in me. Maybe, just maybe, this was their way of apologizing. I couldn't have been more wrong. I woke up that morning with a strange mix of apprehension and excitement. Dad was unusually cheerful, cracking jokes, ruffling my hair. Mom hummed as she packed sandwiches. The shift in atmosphere was so dramatic it didn't reassure me. It just made me uneasy. The 3-hour drive from Ridgeview felt endless. Dad played his classic rock. Mom quizzed me on state capitals. Get one wrong, and Dad would make that disapproving clicking sound, muttering, "Even a 3rd grader would know that, Jen." As we neared the city, Mom turned to me, a strange smile on her face. "So, Jennifer," she said, "think you're pretty smart, do you?" I answered cautiously. Despite that A-, I guess. Dad interjected, eyes still on the road. Book smart maybe, but street smart? That's different. Mom added cryptically, real life doesn't grade on a curve. A cold knot tightened in my stomach. I stared out the window at the approaching Chicago skyline, trying desperately to ignore the warning signals screaming in my mind. We parked near Union Station around noon. The sheer size of that Beaux-Arts building was intimidating, just swarming with people. I'd never been to Chicago, and the scale of it all was overwhelming. Hungry? Dad asked as we walked into the grand hall. I nodded, still clinging to this desperate hope it might become a normal family day. Good. Wait here by this pillar, Mom instructed, pointing to one of the massive columns. We're just going to move the car to a better spot and grab some food. We'll be back in 15 minutes. Can I come with you? I asked, that familiar anxiety twisting inside me. What? Are you a baby? Dad laughed. It's just 15 minutes. You're 12 years old, for God's sake. But I don't know Chicago, I protested weakly. Exactly, Mom said with this chilling emphasis. Stay right here. Don't move. I watched them walk away, swallowed by the surging crowd. The station clock read 12:17 p.m. I stood there awkwardly, a 12-year-old pillar of growing dread, watching lives unfold around me. 15 minutes crawled by, then 20, then 30. The anxiety simmering inside me erupted into full-blown panic. Had they forgotten me? Had something happened to them? After an hour, I was fighting back tears. No cell phone, no money for a payphone, just the $7 from my allowance. And then through the massive windows, I saw it. Our blue Ford Taurus driving slowly past the station. My heart leaped. They'd just gotten lost, confused. I sprinted towards the exit, waving frantically. As the car passed, I saw them, both of them. Dad was driving slowly, and when he saw me, he grinned and waved. Not a wave of relief, but a taunting, cruel gesture. Then Mom rolled down her window. Her words, screamed into the bustling city air, would forever echo in my nightmares. Let's see how you find your way home. Their laughter followed as they sped away. I stood frozen, completely numb. They left me on purpose. In a city 3 hours from home, alone. The initial desperate denial crumbled, giving way to a crushing, suffocating reality. This wasn't a 15-minute lesson. They weren't just parking around the corner, waiting to jump out and yell, "Surprise! Did you learn your lesson?" No, they were actually driving back to Pennsylvania without me. Without me. Complete visceral panic seized me. I stumbled back inside the station, gasping for breath, tears blurring my vision. The vast, grand hall that had seemed intimidating now became terrifying, monstrous. Too many people. Too much noise, too many exits. Where could I go? What could I do? I had no phone, no one in Chicago, not enough money for a ticket, no ID. For 2 agonizing hours, I just wandered the station in a daze, occasionally collapsing into sobs before forcing myself back up. I was terrified to ask for help. My parents had drilled stranger danger into me, warning that police would take disobedient children away to terrible places. But then, around 3:30 p.m., a station employee, a kind-eyed woman with silver-streaked hair named Janet, noticed me. She'd seen me circling, clearly distressed. "Honey, are you lost?" she asked, kneeling down. I automatically shook my head, my parents' warnings echoing in my ears. "Where are your parents?" she persisted gently. They want to move. The car," I lied, my voice cracking. "When was that?" Janet's expression shifted, growing deeply concerned. I couldn't hold it in anymore. 3 hours of abandonment, of raw fear and confusion, came pouring out in a torrent of tears. "They left me," I sobbed. "They drove away and said to find my way home. But home is in Pennsylvania." Janet's expression morphed from concern to alarm. She took me to a quiet spot, got me water, and just listened. Through hiccuping sobs, I told her everything. About my parents, the A-, watching them drive. Away laughing. "What's your name, sweetheart?" she asked. "Jennifer Taylor," I whispered. "And how old are you, Jennifer?" Her face hardened for a second, then softened. "I'm going to help you, Jennifer. What you're describing is not okay." "Not at all." Janet called her supervisor, who called security. A kind officer named Marcus took over, asking me about my parents, our address. I watched the adults exchange grim glances over my head. "We need to call the police," Marcus finally said. "What your parents did is abandonment. It's against the law." And that was how, at 4:45 p.m. on a Saturday, I found myself in a small Union Station office, watching Officer Teresa Ramirez file a report about my abandonment. My entire body felt numb. This couldn't be real. Parents don't just leave their children in strange cities. But mine had. Under the buzzing fluorescent lights of the Chicago Police Department's 1st District Station, I sat wrapped in a borrowed blanket. It wasn't cold, but I was shaking. Officer Ramirez, kind but serious, documented every horrific detail, making the reality of my situation sink in deeper. "We've tried calling your home number twice," she told me, setting down hot chocolate. No answer yet. My stomach twisted. "Maybe they're still driving back," I offered weakly, that desperate, foolish part of me still clinging to the hope this was just some extreme lesson, that they'd turn around. "Maybe," she said, her tone saying no. The station wasn't what I expected. No bars, just desks and computers. But the knowledge that I was here, because my own parents had abandoned me, was overwhelming. Then a new voice. "Jennifer?" A woman with curly brown hair approached. "I'm Laura Donovan from Department of Children and Family Services. Can we talk?" The next hour was a blur of gentle questions. Had they done this before? Yes, but never this extreme. Did they hit me? Not physically. Did I feel safe at home? I hesitated, and that was answer enough. "What's going to happen to me tonight?" I finally managed, my voice tiny. Laura explained that since they couldn't reach my parents, I'd be placed in emergency foster care. The words foster care sent a chill straight through me. I'd heard the stories, none of them good. Laura reassured me. "We have a wonderful emergency placement family, the Williams. They have a daughter your age." By 9 p.m., I was at the Williams dining table, pushing around spaghetti I couldn't eat. Diane and Robert tried to make me comfortable, but nothing felt real. Their daughter, Alicia, showed me to the guest room, awkwardly offering pajamas. "Your parents will probably come get you tomorrow," she said, trying to be kind. I nodded, but I didn't believe it. I didn't sleep that night. I just lay there staring at the unfamiliar ceiling, replaying the image of my parents driving away, laughing. Over and over. What kind of parents did that? What had I done to deserve it? The next morning, after a breakfast I barely touched, Laura Donovan returned. Her face told me everything before she even spoke. "We reached your parents late last night," she said carefully. "Are they coming to get me?" I asked, knowing the answer. "Not yet," Laura replied. "They said they were teaching you a lesson about independence and problem-solving." Hot tears welled up. A lesson? By leaving a 12-year-old in a different state? They claimed they'd planned to call the station after a few hours, but things escalated when authorities got involved. Translation. They hadn't planned to call anyone. They'd expected me to panic, maybe cry, and then what? Magically find my way home with no money, no phone, no ID. Laura confirmed Ethan had expected me home too. He'd been surprised when they returned without me. A fresh, icy wave of betrayal washed over me. So, Ethan hadn't been in on it. Small comfort. "What happens now?" I asked. "We've arranged a meeting at our office tomorrow. Your parents will be there. A judge has been notified and there will be a hearing later this week." The next 36 hours felt like a strange limbo. The Williams family was kind, but I felt like a ghost, moving numbly through their home. Monday, 2 p.m., the DCFS meeting. I put back on my wrinkled clothes. Laura drove me downtown, assuring me I didn't have to speak if I didn't want to. I'd have support. We entered a conference room. Laura's supervisor and a family court liaison were already there. A few minutes later, the door opened. My parents walked in. They looked nothing like the confident, laughing people who'd driven away from Union Station. Dad's face was haggard. Mom's eyes were red. Behind them, a man in a suit. Their attorney. "Jennifer," Mom said, stepping towards me. I instinctively flinched back. "Please take your seats," Laura's supervisor said firmly. What followed was the most surreal conversation of my life. My parents, guided by their attorney, spun their version. They were concerned about my lack of self-reliance. The train station was a controlled life lesson. They'd circled back. After 20 minutes, couldn't find me, and assumed I'd figured out how to call home. They expected to find a message showing I'd risen to the challenge. "We were teaching her independence," Dad insisted. "Kids today are too coddled," Laura's supervisor asked incredulously. "By abandoning your 12-year-old daughter 3 hours from home with no money, no phone, and no ID?" "She's exaggerating about the money," Mom said dismissively. "And there are phones everywhere. She could have called collect." I just sat there stunned. They weren't sorry. They truly believed they'd done nothing wrong. The meeting continued with discussions of child welfare laws, potential charges. My parents never wavered. This was a parenting choice, extreme, but well-intentioned. Then the question, did I want to return home with them? I found my voice. "No," I said firmly, the word surprising even me. "I don't want to go back." The shock on their faces might have been satisfying if I hadn't been so numb. "Don't be ridiculous," Dad sputtered. "Of course you're coming home." "That's not your decision, Mr. Taylor," the court liaison calmly explained. "Jennifer will remain in temporary custody." As the meeting ended, Mom tried again. Jennifer, honey, you're overreacting. We were just trying to teach you to abandon people who trust you, I interrupted, tears finally streaming down my face. That's what I learned. I was escorted from the room, their protests fading behind me. In that moment, I knew. I would never see that house in Ridgeview as home again. The next few weeks were a blur of court hearings, social worker interviews, and therapy. My emergency placement with the Williams family was extended, but their home never felt like more than a temporary shelter, just a waiting room for my life to finally begin. A month after the train station, I met Thomas and Sarah Miller. They arrived at the DCFS office, both in their early 40s, with the kindest eyes and warmest smiles. Thomas was a high school art teacher, Sarah a pediatric nurse. They'd been foster parents for over a decade. We believe every child deserves safety, respect, and room to grow, Sarah explained. Thomas added, no pressure to talk about anything. Until you're ready. Our home is open to you for as long as you need. There was a genuine warmth about them that slowly, cautiously, began to melt my practiced emotional distance. When my new social worker, Grace, asked if I'd be willing to try a placement with the Millers, I nodded. The Millers lived in a modest house in Evanston, just north of Chicago. My room had pale yellow walls, a window seat overlooking a small garden, and empty bookshelves. We want you to make it your own, Sarah said. Whatever makes you comfortable. What are the rules? I asked, weary, bracing myself for the usual impossible standards. Thomas and Sarah exchanged a glance. Basic respect and safety, Thomas replied. Let us know where you are, help with chores, do your best in school. We'll figure out the details together. I waited for the catch, the hidden expectations, the impossible standards. They never came. The contrast between them and my birth parents was disorienting. The first time I spilled juice at dinner, I froze in terror, waiting for the explosion. Instead, Sarah just handed me a cloth. No worries, accidents happen. Trust came slowly, painfully. I kept waiting for them to drop the act, to reveal the cruelty I'd been conditioned to expect. But day after day, they remained consistently, gently kind. Meanwhile, the legal process ground on. My birth parents attended their mandatory classes and counseling, putting in what Grace called minimal effort. They complained to anyone who'd listened that the state was overreacting to a simple parenting choice. But with Dr. Reynolds, my therapist, I finally started to understand. She helped me put words to what had happened: emotional abuse, neglect, abandonment. She diagnosed me with PTSD and anxiety and gave me actual coping mechanisms. For the first time, I learned their behavior wasn't normal. And more importantly, it wasn't my fault. Nothing you could have done would have justified what they did, Dr. Reynolds repeated over and over, until I finally started to believe her. 3 months into my new life with the Millers, Ethan came to visit. He was 16 now, but he seemed smaller, less the golden child, more just an awkward teenager. We sat in the Millers' living room, Sarah busy in the kitchen, giving us space. They miss you, Ethan said finally, staring at his hands. Do they? I asked, skeptical. In their way, he admitted. Dad's drinking more. Mom's always cleaning even when the house is spotless. Are they sorry? I pressed. Ethan hesitated. They're sorry you're gone. I don't think they understand why what they did was wrong. And you? I challenged. Do you understand? My brother looked up, our eyes meeting directly for what felt like the first time. I knew they were harder on you. I should have said something, done something. I'm sorry, Jen. It wasn't everything, but it was honest. We talked for another hour, cautiously, navigating our fractured past. Before he left, he hugged me awkwardly and whispered, I'm glad you're safe. We wouldn't speak again for many years. 6 months after that day at the train station, the court proceedings reached their climax. Based on psychological evaluations, home studies, and my own testimony, the judge ruled that my parents had demonstrated a pattern of emotional abuse, neglect, and endangerment. They were given a choice: an intensive 2-year rehabilitation program with supervised visitation, or surrender their parental rights. To everyone's surprise but mine, they chose the latter. We won't be vilified for trying to raise a strong, independent daughter, my father declared to the court. If the state thinks it can do better, let it try. Just like that, with the stroke of a pen, Frank and Karen Taylor were no longer legally my parents. 3 months later, on my 13th birthday, Thomas and Sarah asked if I wanted them to adopt me. By then, I truly believed in the permanence of their care, the consistency of their love. Yes, I answered, without a moment's hesitation. The adoption was finalized before my 15th birthday. And as part of it, I requested a legal name change, from Jennifer Taylor to Megan Miller, a new name for my new life. You'll always be whoever you want to be in our home, Sarah assured me when I nervously proposed the change. We just feel lucky to be part of your journey. Art became my salvation. Thomas, sensing my talent, poured supplies, books, and gentle guidance into me. My sketchbooks became a visual diary, starting with dark, fragmented images, slowly giving way to color, form, and eventually hope. High school was still tough. Trust issues don't vanish overnight. But I found a small group of art friends who saw me, anxiety attacks and all, without judgment. With Thomas and Sarah's unwavering encouragement, I aimed for the school of the Art Institute of Chicago. Wherever you want to go, we'll help you get there, Thomas promised. When that acceptance letter arrived my senior year, Sarah cried tears of joy. Thomas framed it. And for the first time, I truly allowed myself to believe a bright, beautiful future was possible. Before college, I made a firm decision. No more contact with my birth family. No updates, no connections to the people who'd so callously discarded me. Are you sure? Sarah asked gently. You might feel differently someday. I'm sure, I replied. The Taylors are my past. You're my family now. And with that, I stepped into my future. College in Chicago opened up a world I'd only dreamed of. It buzzed with creative energy, professors who spoke about art like it could change the world, and the freedom to experiment. My first semester was overwhelming, but exhilarating. I found my passion in graphic design, and with every successful project, my confidence, which had been systematically dismantled, slowly rebuilt. Thomas and Sarah were my quiet anchors, sending care packages, respecting my independence, always reminding me their home was my sanctuary. They showed me what healthy parenting looked like. Sophomore year brought Audrey, my bold, neon pigment-loving friend who challenged me in all the best ways. She pushed me creatively, but respected my personal boundaries. When I finally shared snippets of my past, she listened without pity. They really screwed up losing someone like you, she simply said. It was Audrey who pushed me to try dating. You don't have to trust everyone, she reasoned, but maybe try trusting someone. Brian, a photography major, had kind eyes and patient hands. Our first date, coffee, turned into 5 hours of talk. I shared carefully edited versions of my past. My birth parents weren't good people, I said vaguely. I was adopted as a teenager. Family is complicated, he replied so simply. I'm more interested in who you are now than where you came from. Our relationship grew slowly. He never pushed me for more than I was ready to give. The first time I flinched when he reached for my hand, he just nodded and kept talking. The next time I was ready. Dr. Reynolds had prepped me for this. Childhood trauma colors every human connection. Brian and I had our first serious fight 8 months in. A miscommunication, a dead phone, and me waiting alone for over an hour. By the time he showed up, apologetic, I was in a bathroom stall, hyperventilating. You left me, I accused, the words carrying the full weight of the train station abandonment. Brian listened. When I finished, he didn't offer platitudes. I can't promise I'll never disappoint you, he said, but I can promise I'll never deliberately hurt you, and I'll always come back. It wasn't enough to heal everything, but it was honest, and our relationship only grew stronger for it. Graduation came with a mix of excitement and nerves. The protective bubble of academia was bursting. I landed an interview at Element Design, a firm focusing on branding for nonprofits. We like your portfolio, the creative director said, but more importantly, we like your approach. There's a thoughtfulness that can't be taught. 2 weeks after graduation, I started work and moved into my tiny studio apartment. It was mine. The first time I'd ever lived completely alone. I painted the walls, hung my own art, bought plants, a small act of nurturing life. Work was challenging, pushing me out of my comfort zone, but my supervisor, Nadia, was incredible. Your work speaks for itself, she'd say. Trust that, and confidence will follow. She was right. Within 2 years, I was leading major projects. The scared girl from Union Station felt increasingly distant, though therapy still helped me integrate all these different versions of myself. At 27, Brian proposed during a visit to Sarah and Thomas's home. He'd asked their blessing first, not out of old-fashioned tradition, but because he knew how central they were to my life. We married the following spring, Audrey as my maid of honor, Thomas walking me down the aisle. You've built something beautiful, Sarah whispered during our mother-daughter dance, a tradition we both insisted on keeping. We built it together, I corrected, hugging the woman who showed me what motherhood should be. It was around this time my birth parents first tried to contact me. A Facebook message from Karen. Jennifer, we've been thinking about you. Would love to reconnect. Dad and I are still in Ridgeview. I stared at it for hours before showing Brian and Dr. Reynolds. With their support, I stood firm on the boundaries I'd built. I blocked them. Then they tried Instagram, LinkedIn, blocked. The intrusions were disturbing, but I refused to let them derail the life I'd fought so hard for. Instead, I channeled those complicated emotions into something new. In 2008, I left Element Design to start Miller Creative, my own studio, focusing on branding for organizations supporting children and families in crisis. My professional identity became a tribute to the family who had saved me. Brian supported my entrepreneurial leap completely. We talked about kids, but decided to wait. Parenthood still triggered so many fears of repeating patterns. "You're not them," Dr. Reynolds reminded me. "The fact that you're even concerned about this shows how different you are." Our apartment eventually gave way to a small house with separate home offices and a guest room. The day we moved in, Brian surprised me with Scout, a gentle, one-eyed rescue dog with his own history of abandonment. "Thought you two might understand each other," Brian explained. He was right. Scout and I bonded instantly. His unquestioning affection helped heal parts of me that still harbored doubt. My morning started with long walks, watching Scout's simple joy at being alive and safe. With each passing year, the life I'd built felt more solid. My business thrived, my marriage deepened, and my relationship with Thomas and Sarah evolved into the adult parent-child dynamic I'd never dared to dream of. My chosen family grew to include Brian's parents and sisters, who welcomed me without reservation or judgment. I had created a stable, healthy existence despite, or maybe because of, the trauma that shaped me. The memories were still there, but their power diminished with every conscious choice I made to live differently than I was raised. Until this morning, when my phone lit up with 29 missed calls, and the carefully constructed walls between my past and present began to violently crumble. I stared at my phone in disbelief. 29 missed calls from an unknown Pennsylvania number. The notification blared, a digital invasion from a past I'd fought so hard to bury. My finger hovered over the voicemail icon, heart hammering. Scout, sensing my distress, pressed his warm body against my legs. The ordinary kitchen scene, coffee, toast, laptop, was suddenly distorted by this phantom connection. I pressed play, holding my breath. Jennifer or Megan? I guess it's Megan now, a male voice, older but instantly recognizable. Ethan. "It's your brother. I know it's been years, and you probably don't want to hear from any of us, but Dad had a heart attack last night. It's bad. Doctors aren't sure if he'll make it. I thought you should know. My number is..." I disconnected before he finished, my hands shaking so violently I dropped the phone. Scout whined, nudging my palm. "I'm okay," I whispered, more to myself than to him. I'm okay. But I wasn't. My carefully constructed world was cracking. Within minutes, more notifications flooded in. An email. "Your father, please read." A Facebook message. "Jennifer, it's Mom. Please call, it's urgent." 20 years of silence, and now this sudden, overwhelming barrage. Why now? What did they want? The panic attack hit. Without warning. My chest tightened, breathing turned shallow, the kitchen walls seemed to press in. I hadn't had one this severe in years. Fumbling for my phone, I called Dr. Reynolds, so grateful she could see me immediately. "Your reaction is completely normal," she assured me as I sat in her familiar office clutching a tissue. "This is a significant trigger, connecting to your core trauma." "I don't understand why I'm so affected," I admitted. "I made peace with cutting them off years ago." "Did you?" she asked gently. "Or did you build a life around the absence of that peace?" That question hit me harder than I expected. Had I truly processed my childhood, or just successfully avoided confronting its deepest wounds? "What do I do?" I finally asked. "That depends on what you want," Dr. Reynolds replied. "There's no right answer. You can maintain your boundaries, which is entirely valid. Or you can engage on your own terms. If there's something you need from this interaction..." "What could I possibly need from them?" I scoffed. "Only you can answer that," she said. "Closure. Answers. The opportunity to speak your truth. Or perhaps confirmation that your decision to leave was the right one." I left with more questions than answers, but also with techniques to manage the anxiety threatening to overwhelm me. Back home, I called the two people who had earned the right to advise me. Sarah. "Megan, what a lovely surprise," she said. And at the sound of her voice, I broke down again. Through tears, I explained everything. "Oh, sweetheart," she said. "What can we do?" "Tell me what to do," I pleaded. "You know we can't do that," she replied gently. "But I can tell you that whatever you decide, Thomas and I support you completely. Your relationship, or lack thereof, with your birth family changes nothing between us." After Sarah, I called Audrey. She was at my kitchen table within the hour, pouring wine. "Okay, let's think this through," she said. "Worst case if you respond, they pull you back into their dysfunction, make you responsible, dismiss everything, re-traumatize you. Worst case if you don't respond?" I considered it. I might always wonder. Regret not saying what I needed to say. So, Audrey observed, the question isn't about them. It's about what you need. When Brian came home, he found me surrounded by medical research, flowcharts of possible responses. I need to understand what's happening medically before I decide anything, I explained. If this is really life or death, or if it's a manipulation, Brian finished. Is that terrible to even think? I asked. No, he said firmly. It's self-protective and smart. We talked late into the night, weighing every scenario. Brian, who'd never met them but had seen their damage, maintained I owed them nothing. But this isn't about owing, he acknowledged. It's about what will help you move forward. By morning, my decision was made. I wouldn't call or visit immediately, but I would text Ethan. This is Megan. I got your message about Dad. I need more information before deciding my next steps. How serious is his condition? What exactly do you and Mom expect from me? His reply came within minutes. Thank you for responding. Major heart attack. Stable but critical. Triple bypass tomorrow. Mom's a mess. We don't expect anything. Just thought you should know. Would understand completely if you want no part of this. His sincerity surprised me. I wrote back. I need time to think. We'll be in touch. For the next 3 days, I engaged in intense self-reflection, talked to Dr. Reynolds again, and made my ultimate decision. I would meet with Ethan. Only Ethan, at a neutral location, to get a clear picture before considering any contact with my parents. We met at a coffee shop halfway between us. Seeing Ethan after 20 years was surreal. The golden child teenager I remembered was now a middle-aged man, thinning hair, glasses, a rumpled shirt. Megan, he said, standing awkwardly. Thank you for coming. I nodded. Tell me about Dad, I cut to the chase. Ethan sighed, almost relieved, to talk facts. Triple bypass was successful, but complications. He's still in ICU. Doctors are cautiously optimistic, but he's 68 with his history. What history? I asked. High blood pressure, high cholesterol, still drinks too much. Ethan explained. He retired 5 years ago when the heart problems started. I tried to reconcile the imposing figure of my childhood with this aging, failing man. And Mom? She's falling apart. They've been married 45 years. For better or worse, they're completely dependent. Are you close to them? I asked, genuinely curious. Ethan hesitated. Yes and no. I live about an hour away, see them monthly. My wife Nancy isn't their biggest fan, so we keep distance. Why not? After you left, things changed. Or maybe I just started seeing more clearly. They never really took responsibility for what happened with you. They told a lot of stories. To themselves, to family, to everyone. But over time, especially after having my own kids, I couldn't keep pretending. What did they tell people about me? I asked, dreading it but needing to know. At first, that you were staying with friends in Chicago for school. Later, that you'd become rebellious and cut contact despite their best efforts. Most people believed them. They were good at playing the victims. The familiar anger flared in my chest. And you let them? Yes, he admitted quietly. For years I did. I was 18, heading to college. It was easier to accept their version than confront what really happened. I'm not proud of that. His honesty disarmed me slightly. Why are you reaching out now? Just because Dad's sick? Partly, Ethan acknowledged. But also because my daughter, Emma, is 12 now. The age you were when it happened. Watching her has made everything so much clearer. The thought of anyone doing to her what they did to you. He shook his head, unable to finish. We talked for almost 2 hours. Ethan filled me in on his life, his family, answering my questions about our parents with painful honesty. Have they ever expressed genuine remorse? I asked. Not regret that I left, but actual understanding of what they did wrong? In moments, Ethan replied. Dad said things when drinking, that he went too far. Mom still struggles more. But they've both asked about you. They keep a photo of you, your high school photo, on their mantle. The image disturbed me. My younger self, preserved like a memorial, while the woman I'd become remained completely unknown to them. Would you consider visiting Dad in the hospital? Ethan asked. You wouldn't have to talk to him, and I can. Make sure Mom isn't there? I considered it. I need to think about it. Of course, he nodded. And Megan, whatever you decide is okay. You don't owe any of us anything. That night I talked to Brian. He supported me, but cautioned. You're not that powerless 12-year-old anymore. You're visiting on your terms. You can leave anytime. The next morning I called Dr. Reynolds. I asked her to come with me to the hospital, not just as my therapist, but as a support person who understood everything. She agreed immediately. This is an opportunity to engage with your past from a position of strength, she observed. but only if that's what you truly want. I thought about the scared girl at Union Station, the years of healing, the life I'd built, the parents who'd abandoned me. Then I thought about the man in the hospital bed, facing his own mortality. Yes, I said finally. I think I need to do this. Not for them. For me. The hospital. Corridor felt endless. Each step towards the cardiac ICU took conscious effort, my body trying to resist. The antiseptic smell, the hushed voices, the urgent beeping, it all spiked my anxiety. Dr. Reynolds, seeing my shallow breathing, offered a break, but I shook my head. If I stop, I might not start again. Ethan waited at the entrance, relief washing over his face when he saw us. Dad's awake but tired, he whispered. Mom's at the cafeteria. I made sure to schedule this when she'd be away. And she agreed to that? I asked skeptically. Not exactly, he admitted, his discomfort obvious. I introduced Dr. Reynolds as a friend, and he didn't question it. As we neared the room, Ethan touched my arm. Just so you're prepared, he looks different, older, and the surgery. I nodded, bracing myself. But nothing could have prepared me for Frank Taylor. The imposing figure from my childhood memories, now diminished in a hospital bed, surrounded by tubes and wires, his chest bandaged, his skin pale, his eyes were closed but fluttered open at our footsteps. For a moment, no recognition. Then, his eyes widened, lips parting in shock. Jennifer, he rasped. It's Megan now, I corrected automatically. Megan, he repeated, as if tasting the unfamiliar name. You came? I stayed by the doorway, rooted. Yes. The silence stretched. 20 years of absence compressed into that tiny room. You look like your mother, he finally said. I look like Sarah Miller, I replied firmly. My adoptive mother. His face tightened, then softened into resignation. Of course, I deserve that. Dr. Reynolds stood behind me, a steady presence. Ethan hovered awkwardly. Why did you want to see me? I asked directly, needing control. Frank looked taken aback. You're my daughter. I was your daughter, I corrected, my voice steady, until you decided a 12-year-old needed to, find her own way home from Chicago. He flinched. We made a mistake. A terrible mistake. A mistake, I said, is forgetting to pick someone up. What you and Mom did was deliberate cruelty, disguised as parenting. The strength in my own voice surprised me. Years of therapy had led me here. You're right, Frank said quietly. There's no excuse. I've had a lot of time to think, especially since... He gestured weakly at the machines. When you're facing the end, you see things differently. Are you dying? I asked bluntly. Not immediately, they tell me, but this was a warning shot. He tried a weak smile. Makes a man reflect on his regrets. And what we did to you is my biggest regret. Not you, he clarified. Never you. It was the closest thing to an apology I'd ever heard from either of them. But it felt so desperately insufficient against the magnitude of their actions, the years of trauma. Suddenly, commotion at the door. Karen Taylor. Frozen, coffee cup in hand, staring at me like a ghost. Jennifer, she breathed. It's Megan, Ethan quickly corrected. I turned to face the woman who had birthed me, then laughingly abandoned me. At 65, she was still so carefully put together. Colored hair, makeup, tailored clothes, even here. Only her eyes showed the strain. I told you I'd arrange a different time, Ethan mumbled to me. It's fine, I said, though it wasn't. This wasn't part of the plan. Karen moved as if to hug me, but stopped when I instinctively stepped back. Her hands fluttered. You're so beautiful, she said, tears welling. All grown up. I stayed silent, bracing myself. I've thought about you every day, she continued. Wondered where you were, if you were happy, if you ever thought about us. Karen, Frank warned weakly from his bed, give her space. The irony of him advocating for boundaries was not lost on me. I need some air, I announced abruptly, turning to the door. Dr. Reynolds was instantly by my side. Please don't leave, Karen cried. Please, we've missed you so much. I paused in the doorway, turned back to face both of them. You missed me? You abandoned me in a strange city when I was 12. You drove away laughing while I watched. You surrendered your parental rights rather than admit what you did was wrong. And now, 20 years later, you want to talk about missing me? The words poured out, years of unexpressed anger finally finding its voice. Karen flinched as if struck. We were terrible parents, she admitted, tears flowing freely now. We didn't know how to love you properly. That's not an excuse, I countered. Millions of people figure out how to parent without abandoning their children. You're right, Frank interjected from his bed. There is no excuse. We failed you completely. That simple acknowledgement, devoid of justification, disarmed me for a moment. This was what I'd needed to hear 20 years ago. Not explanations, not defenses, just simple accountability. I didn't come here for apologies, I said, my voice steady. I came to see for myself that the people who had such power over me are just that. People. Flawed, aging, ordinary people who made unforgivable choices. Is there any chance? Karen began. No, I interrupted. There's no chance of reconciliation. That opportunity ended the moment you drove away from Union Station. What I can offer is closure for all of us. I looked directly at Frank. I hope you recover fully from your surgery. I don't wish either of you ill. But I need you to understand, I am not Jennifer Taylor anymore. I haven't been for 20 years. I'm Megan Miller. I have wonderful adoptive parents, a loving husband, a successful career, and a life built, far away from the damage you caused. My voice never wavered. I don't hate you anymore. That's taken years of work. But I don't forgive you either, and I don't want you in my life. Any contact should go through Ethan first, and I reserve the right to ignore it completely. The finality of my statement hung in the air. Karen sobbed quietly. Frank closed his eyes, a single tear tracing a path down his weathered cheek. Dr. Reynolds and I left soon after, the confrontation leaving me utterly drained. But in the hospital parking lot, taking a deep breath of fresh air, I felt lighter than I had in years. You did beautifully, Dr. Reynolds observed. How are you feeling? Like I finally got to be the adult in the room, I replied. Like I took back some of the power they had over me for so long. The next few days, I processed it all through more therapy and long conversations with Brian, Sarah, and Thomas. It had been draining, yes, but ultimately empowering. I had faced my abusers on my terms and walked away intact. Ethan texted updates about Dad, which I appreciated but felt no need to act on. I made it clear. Minimal contact with him was okay, but my boundaries with our birth parents were firm. A week later, I sat at my desk deleting the dozens of contact attempts that had piled up since our meeting. Karen had sent daily emails. Frank had called. I blocked their numbers and emails without reading the messages. Then I called Sarah. I just wanted to say thank you, I told her, for everything, for showing me what parents should be. Oh, sweetheart, she replied warmly. You've given us far more than we could ever give you. That evening, Brian and I took Scout for a long walk. The summer air was warm, fireflies just starting to glow in the dusk. Scout trotted happily ahead, his one good eye bright with pure contentment. What are you thinking about? Brian asked, squeezing my hand. How sometimes, I replied. The family you're born into isn't the family you're meant to have. And how grateful I am that I found mine. The path forward wouldn't always be smooth. Trauma leaves lasting scars, and healing isn't linear. But for perhaps the first time, I felt truly free of the shadow my birth parents had cast over my life. I had confronted them not as the frightened child they'd abandoned, but as the strong, successful woman I had become, despite them. The 12-year-old girl left alone at Union Station had found her way home after all, not to the place she came from, but to the life and family she had chosen for herself. Have you ever had to set boundaries with family members who hurt you? What helped you heal from childhood trauma? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Thank you for listening, and I wish you strength on your own healing journey.